Bespoken Spirits is a modern spirits company blending technology and tradition to take craft spirits to entirely new heights. Their unique craft maturation process unlocks amazing flavor combinations while reducing the environmental impact of each sip. The process is all natural and uses only the highest quality ingredients carefully sourced from the best mills, coopers, and distilleries. The result is an unparalleled flavor experience and something you can feel good about drinking. But don't take our word for it, try it yourself. Bespoken Spirits award-winning products can be purchased through retailers or online. Learn more at www.bespokenspirits.com.
With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
There's a new award-winning 4-grain straight bourbon whiskey that's been taking the market by storm, Penelope Bourbon. Penelope's balanced yet flavorful taste profile comes from a unique blend of 3 bourbon mash bills. Currently available in 3 expressions, 4-grain, barrel strength, and toasted, Penelope is remarkably smooth and flavorful. So whether you're sipping neat or using it in your favorite cocktail, Penelope is perfect for you. Penelope Bourbon is available throughout Kentucky, as well as select markets and online at penelopebourbon.com.
Proudly made in the USA and inspired by the American lifestyle, Country Smooth Bourbon was developed by the first female founder and CEO of an American bourbon whiskey company as a refined experience to be savored on its own or enjoyed in cocktails. We are dedicated to celebrating the spirit of America and the crafting of premium bourbon whiskey. To learn more, visit countrysmooth.com, where you can order online or find a retailer near you. Cheers. Country Smooth. Female founded, country grounded.
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me, as always, live in the Bourbon Life studios tonight is my good friend, my buddy, my toboggan or beanie wearing pal, wherever you're from. You know, if you're in the South, it's a toboggan. If you're in the North, it's a beanie. Matt, how you doing tonight, man?
Hey, Mark, I'm doing really well, man. How about yourself?
You sound so soft-spoken over there. You're like, hey, man, you're back in front of the fireplace again, and I'm sure you're not wearing pants at this point. Nobody else can see that, but you're probably just relaxed and taking it easy, right?
We've got sweaty balls.
Oh, man. Oh, no, man. This is like an NPR. Yeah, we'll do the whole Saturday Night Live skit, right? Yeah. I think we'll pass on that, Matt. So how you doing? You doing all right today?
Yeah, man, I'm doing great. You know, we're having a good week. We are getting close to the holiday season here in Kentucky. Ironically enough, it's in the mid 60s, but hey, it's all about the mindset.
And I know it's like you gotta get happy. It's hard to do that when it's 65 degrees outside. It's hard to be in the Christmas spirit here in Kentucky when it's 65 degrees. But you know, we had unfortunately some devastating storms the last weekend out in Western Kentucky. Man, a lot of people just lost everything, and it's very tragic that happened. So our thoughts and prayers go out to everybody, our fellow Kentuckians out there in Western Kentucky who are enduring some very difficult times right now and some hardships. And there's a lot of great people. The bourbon community has rallied, done some great things. There's been some huge donations. There's been a lot of fundraisers, and the fundraisers continue. So, if you're interested, when you hear this podcast, they're still going to, by the time this comes out, I mean, the need is still going to be there. This is not a short-term fix. It's going to be something that goes on for a long time. And these people are going to need a lot of help, a lot of financial support, and a lot of other things. So there is an organization. It's the Team Western Kentucky Tornado Relief Fund. It was set up by the governor here in Kentucky. So they're going to be accepting financial donations. So you can check that out. Just Google search for that Team Western Kentucky Tornado Relief Fund. Also, the Red Cross is another great group you can give money to. So I don't want to be a downer, but that's, it's something that was very serious and obviously affected a lot of people. We lost probably 70 or more Kentuckians, man. So very sad weekend, especially headed into the holidays. But anyway, I want to move on. Of course, we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Bespoken Spirits. We appreciate all of our sponsors. Thank you guys for everything that you do for us. We do have 2 Barrel Society birthdays this week, Matt. Brian Wesley, Abigail Elmer, and Abigail is actually a Christmas baby. So Merry Christmas and happy birthday, Abigail.
Oh, Abigail, you share a birthday with my dog.
Oh, there you go, man. How lucky could you be to share it with Julep, right?
Yeah.
Julep. Yeah. See,
Yeah.
I remember, man. I'm good about that, Matt.
It's Pat Wesley, not Brian Wesley. Come on.
Oh, dude. Yeah, man. That's great from the podcast. Anyway. Yeah. Paul Wesley Pat Wesley as opposed to Paul Wesley. But I digress. Matt, we're getting a great show, man. You want to tell everybody who we have with us tonight?
Let's do it. Let's get right down to it because we've got the Director of Operations from One West Dupont Circle Wine and Liquors in Washington, D.C., joining us on the Bourbon Life Podcast, Prav Saraff. Prav, it's great to have you on the show.
Man, thank you both so much for having me, guys. I'm super excited to hang out, chat, hear some stories, do a little bit of bullshitting, hang out, and really kind of get to know each other better. You know me a little bit better, and I know you a little bit better. I'm looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, man, it's going to be great. Prav, we've never met in person, unfortunately. But we've had the opportunity. We've talked on the phone together a couple of times, and we've messaged back and forth a few times. I'm a big fan and follower of your Instagram site, and we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But I'm just really excited to have you on the show, man. So it's going to be a great time tonight, and we've got some great things to drink. I have a bad habit, probably, of forgetting to talk about what we're drinking and just jumping into the conversation. But tonight, I'm going to be good. Matt, you didn't even have to reel me back in on that, man. I'm under control here. So.
Who are you trying to convince there?
Yeah. All right. So tonight, the first round, I was lucky. I love Heaven Hill from the fact that they post on their Heaven Hill, I can't remember, experience page, maybe on Facebook. I can't remember which page it is, but they will post a day in advance what they're going to have at the distillery, which is really cool. So if you see something that you really want to get, you can head down to the distillery and pick it up. I think it opens at 11 o'clock. I believe that's right, 11 o'clock, which is kind of late. But I was off work the day before Thanksgiving, and the day before that, they announced that they were going to be releasing the Old Fitz Bottled and Bond 16-year-old, which is the Wheated Bourbon. It's in a beautiful decanter. I mean, I know nobody can see this video. I'm just holding up the bottle for effect for me, right? Because I love these bottles, and I just love the decanter. This is one I'll definitely keep after the fact once this is empty. Just to use maybe for an infinity bottle or just for whatever purposes. But I was lucky enough to snag one of those down at the distillery. So I was really happy to get that. And Prav, so I've had a sample off of this, but I've not really gotten into it, man. So tonight is going to be the night that we can really jump into it, man.
Hell yeah, man. I'm looking forward to it. It smells delicious. I've already started to get my nose as deep into the glass as I can. And I've had a few different expressions from the Old Fitz, but I haven't yet had the 16. So I'm looking forward to trying it with you guys.
Yeah, great. So this is 100 proof, of course. It's a bottled and bond. It is a wheated mash bill. It's 75% corn, 20% wheat, 5% malted barley. At least that's what I found on the internet. So I hope that's true. And of course, it is 16 years old. Matt, I see you over there nosing. Man, what do you pick up on this?
I always forget that this is a wheated bourbon. I never remember that when I'm thinking about it and talking about it. But it's got a really rich nose to it. A lot of red fruit, a lot of dark red fruit, stone fruit. There's like plum, fig. It kind of has like that stereotypical red wine kind of nose to it.
Yeah.
And then the wheat definitely shines through as well. It's got that sweet honey wheat, like that fresh baked bread. Almost like a little pie crust to it.
Yeah. I got
you, normally I would pick up in a rye, which is interesting, but I'm kind of smelling that.
I wonder if the time in the barrel, Matt, maybe throws that a little bit since it's a wheater, but it's been in the barrel so long. Maybe it picks up some of the character, and it's not oaky. I don't pick up a lot of oak in terms of the nose on this. But maybe that time in the barrel maybe lends a little bit of to that and changes the profile of the wheat a little bit more than it would in a normal 6 to 8 year old wheated bourbon. Prav, what about you? What do you pick up on that?
So fun little background. Like I don't do tasting notes generally, man. I've never
that's fine.
trained my palate to it. So if you've got a minute, I'm more than happy to discuss like my thoughts, if you would, on sharing my own tasting notes. As you guys
fine,
know,
man.
we do like a lot of. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, man, you take your time and tell us what you want to tell us, Prav. You've got carte blanche to do whatever you want to do tonight, man. It's your show.
I love it. Appreciate that. Thank you. As you both know, we do a good amount of, private barrel picks, right? From the store. And then we've got our private group for it called Prav's Picks. And I get asked on there on and off all the time about tasting notes. And I tell people almost always the same thing. I don't do tasting notes, generally speaking. A, because I suck at it. And B, because of my kind of viewpoint on it. And my viewpoint is, and Matt, you did an amazing job with the tasting notes, by the way. Like what you said, spot on. Like I could pick them up, right, as you were saying it. But I feel like if I give the tasting notes, I'm almost like walking people down a certain path. Like if I say, oh, this has a lot of red stone fruit, like cherry and plum, then I feel like the person tasting it is going to look for that, right? And to me, that has two disadvantages. One is I'm kind of guiding your palate, which I don't think I should, because what's sweet to me might not be to somebody else, right? It might not be as sweet to somebody else. And two, what if I say, oh man, this is so heavy cherry, and then you taste it because our palates are so different and you don't taste cherry, then all of a sudden I'm an idiot, right? So I don't win in that either. Like, oh, that guy knows nothing about what he's talking about. So I just generally, I look for, when I'm buying or tasting whiskey, I look for, is this delicious? Do I like it? Do I not like it? Do I feel like, a wide group of people would like it? Is it group friendly? Is it polarizing? Does it have depth of flavors? Does it have a long finish? Is it tannicky, if you would, or is it bitter?
Right.
Those are the kinds of things that I'm generally looking for. And those are the things that I traditionally will highlight in a whiskey when I'm drinking it.
Well, that sounds fair. So we don't, I get it. And that's like, as soon as Matt starts saying his tasting notes, I sit here and I'm like, yeah.
100%. When he said pie crust, oh, that's what that is. But had he not said that, maybe I wouldn't have picked up on it. Right.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have, for sure. Because my palate is not educated like his is to be able to extrapolate those things, if you would, or those notes out of the glass.
Matt's theory is, if you say it with confidence, then it sounds like it's real and people will believe you.
Yeah, trust me, it's gotten me almost 200 episodes into this thing right here. So
200? No, Matt, we're at 100, man.
Oh, 100, sorry. Two seasons, 100 episodes. Anyway.
I know it seems like 200 episodes sometimes, Matt, but no, we're only, actually, this will be episode 98 for us, Prav. So we're
right on, man. That's the year I graduated high school. So there you go. Age myself a little, but
oh, damn, dude. Now I feel really old. Oh man. But on the nose for me, I'm getting some sweetness off of it. Almost kind of like a brown sugary type of sweetness, Matt. I don't know if you picked that, or Prav, if you guys get that. And I was actually getting almost like a little citrusy note. I was taking like almost a little bit of orange or something. And it could just be me. I don't know, but that was what's kind of coming across on my nose. But Prav, I'm kind of like you. I'm like, yeah, I've got some basic tasting notes, and I just always say, Matt, what do you pick up?
Matt, you want to come work at the store, man? So when somebody asks, I could just turn around, Matt, what do you pick up?
It'd be my honor.
There you go. Hey, man, don't bust up the podcast here, Prav. Come on, man.
You can do it virtually. We can record from the store.
We could do it like this. Exactly right, man. That's the beautiful thing. We started this. It's funny because last week we were talking about when we started it. And we started in February of last year, just before COVID shut everything down. And our big theory was, we're going to go to all these distilleries. We're going to talk to all these people. It's going to be great. And then 2 weeks after, we're like, shit, we can't go anywhere. I found Squadcast, and I'm like, this has been a lifesaver, but it's opened up so many more opportunities because, there's no way we were going to be able to come to DC and sit down with you. We'd love to. But it just opened up so many opportunities for us to talk to so many different people across the United States. And there's so much good bourbon and whiskey being made across the US, not just here in Kentucky. So it's kind of funny that you say that, but it's true, man. Technology is great, and you can do these shows from pretty much from anywhere. So we love it.
That's really cool, man. I mean, you're kind of touching on a point that I always harp on with my kids, right? Like, life is all about what you make of what happens, right? COVID happened, and obviously it was like the shittiest thing, and is the shittiest
Right.
thing, and it sucks because, it paralyzed, if you would, our country and the world almost in a way, right? At the same time, it's what you make of it. You take the silver lining of the fact that it gave us this opportunity because you found this Squadcast, and for us to be able to chat and hang out this way where we might not have ever discovered this. And you guys might have been like, yeah, we'd love to do a show with you, but if and when we get to DC, or if and when you come to see us, whereas
Right.
now we can be like, we can do this globally, anywhere and everywhere, man. So it's all about the looking for the kind of positives that we can in whatever is happening in life.
Yeah, I agree with that, man. Very cool. And, Matt is so dedicated to the podcast that he even has gone on a family vacation to South Carolina and recorded the podcast while he was on.
Wow.
Hey, I mean, somebody's got to sit on the beach and do these things.
Somebody's going to drink bourbon on the beach. It might as well be Matt, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, Prav, why don't you do us a favor, man? Just kind of tell everybody who you are for those listeners out there who may not be familiar with you. I know some of them definitely will be. Some of them may not be. So just take as long as you'd like. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, how you got started. Tell us about your background. Let's, the world of Prav. Let's hear it, man.
All right. The world of Prav, man, that's a little overwhelming and a little grandiose for me. But I will tell you a little bit about me, my family, and our background. So we've been in the wine and liquor retail business now for 27 years or so. And we've had stores in DC. We've owned a total of 9 stores, I think, in DC in that time period.
Wow.
We currently only own 2. There was a time period of about 4 or 5 years or so where we had made a business of buying a store that was in a location where we thought, a store could thrive in, but it was being poorly run for whatever reason, right? Sometimes it's just a terrible owner, sometimes it's absentee owner, sometimes it's whatever combination of different things. So we would buy a struggling store in a really good neighborhood and fix it up and, kind of pretty it up, fix the inventory, fix the pricing, do whatever needed to do to turn it into a very profitable business. And then we would then turn around and sell it to someone else that could make money off of that store. So we did that for about 3 or 4 years and have now kind of settled down, if you would, to the 2 that we own. I don't foresee more in the future, but at the same time, I've been saying that for several years, and then there's always another one that comes up. How we got into it is actually depending on how detailed you want to get into it. I'm more than happy.
Man, tell us the story. Let's hear it.
All right,
that's
cool.
what bourbon's about, stories, man. So let's hear the story.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, brother. So my family's originally from India, but I was born and raised in Nepal, and my pop was like the retail king, if you would, of Nepal when he was there in the, early 80s. Like he was the first one to import high-end sunglasses and things of that nature from Hong Kong into Nepal to sell them in his retail shop. You could probably think of any high-end brand name, and he was the first one to bring it to Nepal and sell it. So he had a few profitable retail stores there. And Nepal back then used to be a huge tourist hub for shopping. A lot of people from all over India would come there for shopping. And then obviously a lot of Westerners would come there to trek Everest and then end up in Kathmandu, which is the capital city, which is where we were, where I was born and raised. So Dad had this one customer that was an American customer that would come to Nepal every 2 years or so. And every time he came to Nepal, he'd always visit our shop. And this guy really liked Dad a lot. So one day he was just telling Dad randomly, man, you're doing great here. And I know you're doing really well for yourself, but your future really is in a country like America. That's where, you and your kids could live the American dream, so to speak, right? He'd be like, there's no limit to how well you can do in America. And Dad was like, oh yeah, you think my kids would like it and stuff? And he was like, yeah. And my dad's always been hardcore entrepreneur, right? Risk taker, bet on himself, doesn't care about any variables about how this doesn't make sense and how many ways it could go wrong. He'd always find the ways it could go right. Yeah.
Awesome.
So he was like, okay, cool. I'll go check it out. Literally on a whim comes to check out America to see if his family would like it here. He spends a few weeks here. I think it was 3 weeks, if my memory serves me correctly. Goes back home and tells my mom in Nepal, he's like, okay, start packing up your stuff. We're moving to America. Literally just like that, right?
Wow.
totally wild. Comes to America, and then he struggles, like most immigrants do, to find, a good wage to be able to support his family. He didn't want to bring his money with him from Nepal, just in case we didn't like it here, things didn't end up here. So he wanted to go back and not have to start from scratch again in Nepal.
Right.
So he left his money in Nepal. And he's like, I'll just start from fresh, in America. I've seen this man work like 21 hours a day, 6 days, 7 days a week for like months in a row, right? And never complain about it. And I always tell everybody, like, we've been blessed to know the who's who of the US doing what we do. And I know some like of the most successful businessmen in the country. And I will put my pops' business wits against any of them any day of the week, right?
Yeah, very cool, man. Very cool.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thank you. So then finally, he gets his big break. We buy our very first store in 95 in DC. And I was 15 at the time. And the entire family, me, my mom, my pops, my older sister, we worked at the store whenever we could. It was not exactly legal for me to be working at the store at that time, right? Because you can't work until you're 18. But free labor is free labor. And when you're trying to build a business, every dollar you save counts.
Sure.
So I would be doing there part-time. We didn't know anything back then, right? Like about the product, about the business. All Dad knew is that he had worked at liquor stores before in DC. And he saw that if you work hard and you treat people well, it was a very successful business. Right. And that's all Dad knew. And Dad knows business. Like to this day, you could give my dad a glass of bourbon, a glass of red wine, and a glass of beer. And if you blindfolded him, he wouldn't be able to tell you which is which. Right. Like he doesn't know the product.
Right.
He's not a product person. He has no clue kind of what he is drinking, if you would, just because it's never been his thing. But he's a businessman. I tell this story, funny story sometimes. When we first bought the business, man, we were pronouncing things like Pinot Noir, Peanut Noir, right? Because we had no clue, right? And think about this is like in the mid 90s. There was no Google to teach us.
Right.
There was no you couldn't go what is Old Fitz mash bill? If you wanted to find out what Old Fitz mash bill was, you had to talk to somebody physically that knew what the Old Fitz mash bill was. Otherwise, you just weren't going to find out.
Right.
It's been a hell of a ride learning along the way, having a ton of fun, obviously, along the way. But so we opened our first store in 95. I was working there part-time. I go to college. And one summer between my freshman and sophomore year in college, Dad's main help at the store had to go back to his country because he had an emergency. So Dad was like, I'm going to need you to work full-time at the store this summer. And it's like, that's fine. We do whatever we do, right? So I worked there full-time, and I absolutely fell in love with the business, guys. Every aspect of it, the product, the people, the labels, the guys that worked for the distributors, the suppliers, the distilleries, the wineries, our customers, everything. And my mind was just blown. And this is 19, 20-year-old me that had my mindset on either going to college for opening up my own PR firm or advertising firm, because that's what I was 100%, that's what I was going to do, to completely getting mind fucked. Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Getting my mind blown by this incredible new industry, even though it wasn't new, right?
Right.
I told Dad, I said, man, I completely fell in love with this business now this summer. So I think I'm going to stay until you're basically kicking me out. Right. And then over the next kind of year and a half, I spent a lot of time doing what Dad hadn't done, which is learning the product.
Gotcha.
Right. And then again, still at this point, Google now existed, but it wasn't what it is today. Right.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Today, you've got a depth of knowledge of anything and everything you want that you can you don't even have to type it in. You can just be like, hey, Siri, what is this or that or whatever, and you'll find out. Right. But back then we didn't have that. I'm not sure I understand.
She's always listening, Prav. And I'm leaving that in the show too, just so everybody. Yeah, I'm leaving that in.
But back then we didn't have that, so we just had to genuinely talk to people. But luckily, I've been very blessed. A few very important people came into my life that are a huge part of us and where we are today. One such guy, God rest his soul, was a customer who ended up becoming a really good friend who had an office directly across the street from where the store was. So this guy comes into the store one day and he goes, hey, do you carry Silver Oak, Caymus, Cape Red, and Stag's Leap, 4 or 5 other high end, and I put high end in air quotes at this point, Cabernets that at that time retailed between like $50 and $100, right? And at that point, we didn't carry any of that stuff, guys, because I didn't know what it was, Mark. So we couldn't sell it, right?
Right.
We focused on like $8 to $20 bottles of wine, and like that was our thing. And I told him, I said, no, man, we don't. And he was like, you know what, man? We've always been all about customer service, like always. So I'm giving this guy like all my attention, really good customer service. And he goes, you know what, kid, I really like you. You remind me a lot of me when I was younger. He said, I'm going to do you a solid. He said, go get a pen and paper. Right. So I go get a pen and paper, and he goes, write down these 6 names, and write them down, right, of these wines. And he goes, call your distributor, order a case of each of these, put whatever your standard markup on them is, call me when they come in. I'll come in and buy half a case of each. And then you put the other half a case of each on your shelf. And he said, if they sell in a month, great. If they don't, call me and I'll come back and buy them so you can't lose.
Wow.
Right? Like what a total win for me, right? Like,
yeah,
honestly, that's huge. So any guy normally would be like, oh my God, that's amazing. But I've always kind of been like borderline cocky and arrogant in a weird way, right? So, and like I've always been like reach for more and ask for more type of a guy. So I'm like, I tell him, I'm like, I'll do that, but I'll do it on one condition. And mind you, I'm in no position to make a condition with this guy. So he's like, rolls his eyes. He's like, yeah. I was like, I'll do it, but I don't just want your money. I want your knowledge, right? I want to know, I want to learn what you know. So I was like, if you'll teach me, you know, I'll obviously be forever indebted to you, but that's what I really want to get out of this. And he goes, okay, cool, Dad, that's fine, no problem. He's like, why don't you come by my office every Tuesday at 4:30? And, you know, we'll have a glass of wine together and I'll teach you. I was like, amazing. So every Tuesday at 4:30, I would go over there with like my little notebook and pen, and we would just go through, like, he'd open a bottle of wine, we would drink it together, and he'd be like, what do you want to talk about today? And I'd be like, Oregon Pinot Noir or whatever, right? Like Italian reds, French Bordeaux. And he would just go, okay. And then he would just start rattling off whatever he knew. And I'm just sitting there jotting down all my notes. And that's how I learned like a lot in the very beginning. And then I realized like there's this kind of like other world out there that we hadn't explored, right? So all of a sudden we started carrying wines that were $200, $300, pushing the envelope, see if we could get away with it.
Right.
All of a sudden, the $200 to $300 bottles started to sell a little because now somebody could come into the store and talk to someone that knew what they were saying about those wines, right?
Right.
And then we take it to the next level and then realize, like, as we start to get into more and more high-end stuff, that there's this entire niche of like super high-end, like, you know, some of the, you mentioned our Instagram page earlier, like some of those things that are on our Instagram page that nobody in DC was selling at that time. And even till now, like very few people, actually maybe nobody else outside of us is really focusing on them. There's a few stores, of course, that carry them and carry, you know, bits and pieces here and there. But I would put our high-end selection against anybody's in DC for sure, and maybe in the country, right? Yeah. Just because that's what we've really have honed in on. And luckily for us, we realized that niche way, way, way back, like, you know, 2+ decades ago.
Right.
And so that's when we kind of then started really building upon that. And then, you know, you could just keep going and going. And there's a billion stories I could tell you, but I feel like at some point we're going to run out of time.
Well, I was going to say, well, let's talk about the whiskey that we're drinking, and then we'll take a break, but we can come back and pick up, man, because it's a great story. And I know people want to hear it because I'm enjoying listening to it. But let's talk about this Old Fitz and get some ideas in terms of the palate and the finish on that. Matt, what do you get on that, man?
I think you mentioned that you found the nose to be quite sweet. I find the palate to be quite sweet. Like a lot of brown sugar, a lot of maple syrup. The oak is coming through on the palate with it, not in that tannic way, but in like a nice, enjoyable, rustic way. Also getting like a little bit of strawberry, like some sweet berries on it as well. Maybe a little bit of peanut or some sort of a nut flavored as well. And just a nice warm cinnamon finish.
Yeah, I'm liking that finish too, man.
Not anything spicy, but like a good heat, nice lingering flavor.
Yeah, that sweetness on the palate is just like, it's like candy. I mean, it's like a dessert almost, which is really, I mean, I'm surprised to drink this because I was thinking 16 years old, you're getting on that borderline of, man, is this going to be really oaky and tannic? You know, you just don't know what you're going to get. But damn, this is a nice bottle. This is a really nice bottle, man. So I'm happy I stood in line for 4 hours to get this, man. Prav, what about, well, I know you're not going to give us tasting notes. What do you think though, overall, in terms of the taste?
Oh, I think it's absolutely delicious, man. I really am enjoying the finish. It's really, really long and kind of keeps on going and going.
Yeah.
And almost developing, like we were talking about earlier, like the depth of flavors, that's there. This isn't flat, right? It's not one tone. Like you go, oh, that is sweet. Oh, wait, now it's a little spicy. So I'm really, really enjoying it.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm glad we were able to get that to you. I'm glad we were able to share that.
Yeah, no, thank you, man.
So
wow, that's impressive, dude.
What's that?
4 hours waiting in line, dude. That's impressive, man.
I think my record's 36, but we won't talk about it.
We'll talk about that another time. Wow.
We'll talk about that maybe next round or something. But yeah, for me, this is 2 thumbs up, man. I'm really impressed with this. I love wheated bourbons. I love Heaven Hill products. I love the barrel proof. I usually like higher proof stuff. This one, even at 100 proof, it doesn't drink higher than 100. This is very, I hate to say smooth, but it's very sweet. It's very enjoyable. It's a very easy drinker. And I think this is something you'd break out with friends that you want to, really good close friends that you want to impress and say, here's one of my best bottles, because I would consider this probably to be one of the best bottles that I've got here in the collection. So I'm happy we can share it with you, Prav.
It's very, very tasty. Thank you for sending some over, man.
No doubt. All right, guys, let's take a quick break, get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more with Prav Saraff, the Director of Operations. I'm going to say the whole thing at 1 West Dupont Circle Wines and Liquors in Washington, D.C. Everybody just sit tight. We'll be back in just a second.
Three Chords line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The 3 Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they called Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.3chordbourbon.com.
Spirits of French Lick crafts their spirits using only the finest agricultural product that has defined character, following their motto, respect the grain. They lead the way in representing the quality of the Hoosier artisan distilling process while paying tribute to its inseparable past. By implementing best practices from those early times, combined with modern touches, Spirits of French Lick has created a truly unique place in the industry. Spirits of French Lick products are distributed throughout Indiana, Kentucky, and Missouri, and can also be purchased online through Sealbox at sealbox.com. Visit spiritsofFrenchlick.com to learn more information, and make sure to follow them on Facebook and Instagram.
All right, everybody, welcome back for round, session, period, scene, act, whatever, number 2, whatever you want to call it, of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark. With me, as always, live in the Bourbon Life Studios. Matt, I'm not drunk, I promise. I'm just stumbling over my words. I'm so excited for the show tonight. I'm just, I can't.
Yeah, that's right. Can't even keep your mouth straight over there.
That's right, man. But live in the Bourbon Life Studios with me is my good friend, my co-host, Matt. Matt, how you doing, man?
Mark, always great to be back in the Bourbon Life Studios. We've got a nice recording session going on tonight, and we're happy to bring it to you all whenever it is you choose to listen, morning, afternoon, or evening. Hopefully not super late at night. Hope you're getting a good night's sleep to all our listeners out there, but we're happy to have you back, and we're also happy to have back the Director of Operations at 1 West Dupont Circle Wine and Liquors in Washington, D.C., Prav Saraff. Prav, welcome back to the Bourbon Life Podcast.
It is a ton of fun, man. You guys literally make me feel like A, home, and B, like we've known each other for years. So you guys are amazing at what you do. Keep at it.
Thanks, man. We really appreciate that very, very much. It's funny because I've listened to your episode about probably 2 years ago with John and Zeke on the Dad's Drinking Bourbon, and I'm like, I need to be friends with Prav like John and Zeke are. So we'll work on that.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I mean, and John and Zeke will appreciate that. They're easily replaceable. So yeah, come on. Man. They are 2 really, really good friends. Their podcast is obviously amazing, but and just like you guys, right? It's because they're genuine and they're themselves, and you don't have to worry about some sort of a show with them. Right. They are who they are, right? It's just like you're hanging out with your friends. You just happen to be doing it in front of a mic. That's all.
Yeah. John's a great guy. I don't know Zeke that well, but I do know John. He's a great guy. And we text and call each other, not every day, but we're always communicating. You got a little visitor there with you, Prav. That's great.
Yeah, my son keeps on poking his head over my shoulder after
That's all.
I wish come downstairs.
Yeah, I wish we were recording video because that's really cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, you want to say hi real quick and then you got to go, buddy.
Yeah.
How's it? All right. Okay.
Hi.
Right,
Good to meet you. No, man.
You want to
restart
cool.
No, dude, no. It's funny. We've had other guys and their kids just randomly pop in because, like we talked earlier, we're recording from home, we're remote. We're not in a studio. We're not doing anything. So
that's right.
Man, you're around your family, you're doing your thing. So that's part of what makes this cool. Makes it fun. So
yeah, that's awesome. But yeah, so I, like I was saying, like those guys are great because they're genuine. They're just who they are. Right. So when we're talking, we're just talking. It just happens to be in front of a mic. And that's what the same feeling you guys have given me. And that's why I said it feels like, we've known each other for years just because I don't feel like it's again, air quotes, which suck for, radio and not audio. And it doesn't feel like an interview. Right.
Right. Well, it's funny because John and I we've been talking for probably a year and a half or more. And, we'll text and we'll call each other, but we had never met until back in October. And he invited me to come down to Tennessee to go to the Grains and Grits Festival. I don't know if you've ever heard of that or not, but it's put on by the Tennessee Distillery Association. And they just get a ton of distillers from Tennessee together and a ton of restaurants that do food. It's out in this huge field. It's just like a huge party. And John was actually doing a podcast. So he was recording different segments with different people. So I was on his podcast with him for a few minutes, but just a down to earth, genuine, just a great guy, man. So, but I'm glad he's replaceable.
He's going to kill me when he hears that.
Oh yeah. I'm going to text him tonight and be like, Prav said you're replaced, man. Sorry. So let's talk about what we got poured up in this round before we jump back into what we're talking about in the first round. This is a new one for me and I have not tried this. I'd cracked open that old Fitz just to give it a little taste. This is one I'd never even heard of before. This is from a place called Brain Brew Distillery. It's out of Ohio. This is called the Dexter 3-Wood Bourbon. It is 100.6 proof. Oh, Matt, you've got the bottle, man. Tell everybody what it is.
Yeah, I would be glad to. I'm holding the bottle here. This is the Dexter 3-Wood. So this is 3-Wood. I feel like I'm playing golf. 3-Wood, straight bourbon finished with 200-year oak, maple wood, and cherry wood. It is from Brain Brew Custom Whiskey, and we are clocking in at 50.3% ABV or 106 proof. So let's see on the back here. After resting in traditional oak barrels, Dexter is woodcraft finished using woods the way Edmund Dexter might have done, reclaimed 200-year oak, maple wood, and cherry wood.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a finish. So it's not necessarily in barrels. It's just finished with woods that are reclaimed and they're 200 years. Okay. So that's the thing.
Yeah. It sounds like they throw wood chips, if you would, into the barrel, which is not
into the barrel. Right.
Scotland. Not that uncommon in Scotland, if you would, to do. It is somewhat uncommon in the States. There's a few guys doing it. I know, like, for example, for years, there's a semi-local distillery here in Virginia called Copper Fox. I don't know if you guys have
haven't heard of
access to them or ever heard of or seen them, but they've been doing this stuff for years where they do like apple wood and peach wood and different kinds of like wood that they throw in it. Seems like a similar-ish concept here.
Gotcha. Matt, I didn't see an age on the bottle. I looked online. I didn't see any age on this at all. So I have honestly.
There's no age statement on here.
It's got a good color to it, but that could be because they've, if they put chips or something in the distillate, it could be, it could have picked up some color from that, not necessarily from time in a barrel. But I did see something. I think something where I saw that it's at least 36% rye in the mash bill. So we've gone from a wheater to a really, really, really high rye, Matt, which is kind of your jam. But what do you pick up on the nose on this, man?
It's funny you said, and I had to look back at our little cue sheet here to pick up that you said is 36% rye, because on the first nose, I would not have guessed that in the least. The first thing I got was flavors that I really associate with a high corn bourbon. I got like a lot of butterscotch, a lot of caramel, some vanilla, but a lot of like the sweet corn, that cream corn or like cornbread type aroma initially. But now I think as it's sitting out and getting a little bit of air to it, that rye is coming through and picking up a little bit of mint, a little bit like a little floral, little herbal quality to it as well.
Yeah. On the first nose, Matt, honestly, this kind of reminded me somewhere between like a Woodford Double Oaked and an Old Forester 1910. Just that double oaked type of taste or type of aromas to it, the sweetness that comes off of it. And I almost thought I picked up almost a hint of banana, which made me think of that 1910 Old Forester. But it's very toasty. I don't know. It's like kind of like a dessert, almost like a desserty kind of bourbon to me. Prav, what do you think?
To me, it smelled youthful. Like that's what that was the first thought that I had.
Okay.
I said that before you asked or I was thinking that before you asked about the age statement. I failed to pull a ton of aromas from it but with that being said, I haven't tasted it, and also maybe I'm being a little unfair to it because we're tasting it right after a 16-year-old wheated product from Heaven Hill, so that's not exactly a level playing field either for it. But sure. Imagine once I taste it, hopefully some more stuff will jump out of the glass.
Yeah. So we were talking about your past and your business, you and your family, kind of how you got to a point you had a guy that was really helping you to learn more about the business. And then you kind of jumped in. So was there a point, you're the director of operations now. So was there a point, I guess at some point you basically kind of took over the show?
Yeah, you could say so. So like, I would say probably roughly junior year or so of college. So I was probably 21-ish at that time. And that's when and that's when I would say like kind of went, I was already full-time or so, if you would, at the store, in the sense that I would go there every day after school and of course every weekend as well. But that's when I started to take more responsibilities off of my pops' plate and off of his shoulders and take them on myself. That included all the handling of all like clients and customers that eventually became like VIP clients and customers and friends, if you would, by now, because it's been so many years, right? And also it became dealing with a lot of the suppliers and the distributors and doing a lot of the ordering, just because the stuff we were ordering now was so different than what we were ordering 3 or 4 years ago. And when I say now, in 01 or 02, whatever, around 01 or so. What we were ordering then was so different than what it was 3 years prior to that. So I would say right around that time is when I started to take over. And then when I graduated college, which was in 02, by that time it was like full on gangbusters, and like my pops will never retire just because it's not in his makeup as a person, right? But like that's when he was like, okay, I don't have to worry about any of the day-to-day anymore at the store. Like he doesn't have to really worry about any of those responsibilities because I had more or less taken over all of that.
So you're 21 years old when you kind of start doing all this stuff. That's kind of crazy. Were you still at college? Were you still going to school?
Still going to school, man. I would every day after school, I would run over, first thing I would do as soon as class would end, would go straight to the store, not even go home first, and then like have, my late lunch or dinner or whatever it was at the store usually, and then get right to work.
So you had this guy that was talking about high end wine, and you kind of started going down that road. Yeah. When was it that you actually started getting more into the bourbon and the whiskey, the brown spirits and things like that? Because in 98, I guess we kind of coming out of that, the doldrums of the bourbon world. Things were starting to pick up, but things weren't as booming, obviously, as they are now. So how did all that kind of play in that you kind of moved into the bourbon stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we actually did, and probably till this day do, more with really, really high-end scotch than we did or do bourbon, right? And it's also easier in a way because there's a lot more $100,000 plus bottles of scotch than there are $100,000 plus bottles of bourbon. Right? Yeah. So like when you play in that kind of field, if you would, there's a few bourbons these days that command that kind of a price tag, but they're few and far between, where there's an endless number of scotch or Japanese whiskeys or things of that nature. So how did we get into it was one of the many genius ideas that my pops had was our store that we ran at that time, which is one of the ones we've sold by now, is like in the heart of downtown DC. So we're like a 6-minute walk from the White House, right? So surrounded by kind of the who's who of DC, all the big lobbyist firms, all the big kind of politicos, if you would, all the big law firms, anybody, you were more or less, your office was downtown DC if you were
right.
So we had a lot of foot traffic of like really high end guys that not only spent half their life, if you would, or a third of their day in that kind of geo-central area, but then also a ton of visitors from out of town, because if you had a meeting, you generally had it in DC, right? So we had a lot of high-end visitors. So one of my pops' genius ideas was, we've got this incredible storefront, glass front, if you would, that we should make this kind of like our billboard. So he started to put some high-end bottles on display in the window front. So when you're just walking by, you would see like, oh, there's a bottle of Macallan 30-year-old in their window, or, you know, a bottle of whatever it was at that time. And you would then stop in, oh, bottle of Louis XIII in the window or whatnot. So the idea was, as you're just walking by, it catches your eye, then you come in, you talk to one of us, and then hopefully at that point we can either close the transaction or tell you a little bit about what we do, get some sort of exposure for the store,
Sure.
And kind of show people around. So that's how that started. We started to put, you know, smaller bottles in the window, right? Like stuff that was like $500, $1,000 or whatever. And when we thought that those started to sell, we go, okay, now let's put like $2,000 bottles up on the window.
Right.
You know, and then we kind of took like baby steps in the beginning, because it was calculated risks. It was a very big unknown, and selling on e-commerce wasn't a thing back then. You couldn't make an Instagram post and post these 3 bottles back then and be like, here's these 3 badass bottles that we have, and then hope to sell out of at least 1 or 2 or maybe all 3 of them.
Right.
So this was our Instagram post, if you would, for back then, right? It was just for people that were walking by on the street. And then one day we had a guy walk in that saw some Macallans in the window and walked in and asked about a 50-year-old Lalique bottle. And at that time, that bottle used to retail for $6,000, or maybe it was $5,000. I'm sorry. And at that point, we had not sold anything remotely close to that, right? Like our most expensive bottle we had ever sold at that point was like $1,500.
Yeah.
But I knew where one was in Chicago. So I told him, I was like, yeah, I could find it. No problem. I can have it here in 2 days if you want it. And he was like, yeah, I would take it in a heartbeat, as long as you can cut me a good deal on it. So we sold him a bottle for $5,000. And as a gift to him, we gave him a Macallan 30-year-old, which at that time was $600, just to kind of like, you know, build a relationship with him and stuff. And then that really gave us the confidence to start to do bigger and more high-end bottles. And it has snowballed so much, Mark. I mean, I'll tell you, and fun story about how crazy whiskey is. That same $5,000 bottle is in my store now for $265,000.
Oh, jeez.
And that $600 gift that I gave him, it was what's known, if you would, in the whiskey collectors arena as the Macallan 30-year-old sherry cask in a blue box. It comes in like a blue square wooden box. That's conservatively a $9,000 to $11,000 bottle now. That was the gift that we gave him for buying this other bottle. Yeah, times have certainly changed, man. I mean, back when we were doing it, there would be like, we could just pick up the phone and we did pick up the phone and just order cases and cases of Pappy whenever we wanted it from the distributor. And at this time, it was all Stitzel Weller juice. And we used to literally have to convince people to buy it. Because like I was saying, we did a lot of scotch, right? So somebody would come into the store and be like, hey, I need a gift for my boss. I'm thinking about getting him like a Johnny Walker Blue Label. And I would hand sell them like a Stitzel 20-year-old Pappy instead and it was like, hey man, try this instead. Like Johnny Blue is cool and everything, but it's like so everyday. And at this time, bourbon wasn't what it is today, right?
Right.
So I was like, but this is a much better bottle of whiskey. And, you know, this is going to go further with your boss than like a bottle of Blue Label, which he probably already has at his house anyways. So we used to literally have to upsell it and kind of convince people to buy these things. And then when we would get down to like 1 or 2 bottles on the shelf again, we just pick up the phone, call the distributor, and order another 2 cases.
Man. The good old days. But so you've been around, man. You've seen, you've really seen the bourbon industry just completely get turned on its head. I mean, it has exploded, man. So how has that impacted your business? How have you changed? And what have you done I mean, I know you do some obviously other things besides the store. So let's kind of talk about that and how you've transitioned and adapted, kind of following like what your dad did, just, taking some calculated risk and being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, man. Thank you. So one of the things I always tell my friends stuff is I want to think today of what people are thinking 2 to 3 days from now, right? Like I always want to kind of look ahead and think ahead and get a, step ahead of everybody else. So like right now, as you guys know, like barrel picks are the in thing. They're the cool thing, right? Like every neighborhood, it seems like in America has a local bourbon barrel group or whatnot.
Right.
And every store in the country, whether it's a corner store or Total Wine or Binny's or any of these, original stores, if you would, has like a barrel buying program and stuff. But we were doing this stuff before it was cool, right? We were buying barrels from we've got great friends like at Smooth Ambler, and we were buying barrels from them before it was like a cool thing to do.
Yeah.
So that was like kind of like us kind of looking ahead, if you would, and like trying to do that. So we've transitioned now. We still do a ton of Scotch, a ton of Japanese whiskey and those types of things. But a lot of our focus now has also been bourbon, and it's also been the private barrel private barrel program. And we want to participate with as many fun distilleries as possible. What we look for, obviously we want to look for product. What's in the glass? What am I drinking? Is this the quality where I won't be ashamed to sell it? Can I look my customer in the eye and say, yes, you should spend $80 or $100 a bottle on this? And not only will you be okay with it, but you'll come back tomorrow for either another bottle of the same thing or another recommendation because I've steered you wrong. I mean, right. I steered you right. I haven't steered you wrong.
Right.
Right. Like if I poke you in the eye, I can do it once, but I'm not going to get away with it again and again. Right. But if I don't know, man,
if you give me a $9,000 bottle of whiskey, you might be able to poke me in the eye a couple times, bro.
I better be able to poke more than the eye for that.
I'd be willing to give up a few more things, man. So,
that's definitely one of the things we've done. And then we've also now, something we didn't do, unfortunately, back then is gotten into a lot of the really creme de la creme bourbons and rye as well.
Right.
Then, unfortunately, our focus was so much more on the imported whiskeys, the single malt scotches, the Macallans, the Highland Parks, the Dallimores, the Springbanks, and then all these Japanese whiskeys, the Yamazakis, the Hibikis, the Karizawas, etc., that we almost, in a way, took the stuff in our backyard for granted. Right. Like I said, we could just call and pick up and order whatever we want.
Right.
I'll never forget, like when Willet first came on the scene in DC, I'm sure you guys have heard of Jack Rose, right?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Bill Thomas, that owns Jack Rose, was the person responsible for bringing Willet into DC. He also at that point had a hand or say, whatever you would, in the distributor that carries Willet or carried Willet. And I'll never forget, Bill comes into my store one day, and because he used to frequent on and off, and we would chat whiskeys and stuff at the store. And he goes, "Hey, Prav, I'm thinking about bringing in this stuff called Willet. They do a ton of like single barrel bourbons, and it's like all cask strength stuff, and it's like really cool." And he's like, "It's not really cheap. Like wholesale's like $60 a bottle on it." And he's like, "But it's like 15 years old, 18 years old, and stuff." And he's like, "If you'd try it out, dude, that'd be awesome." And I was like, "Yeah, man, if you're behind it and if you tell me it's worth it, I'm happy to try it." Right? So we would like literally get like single barrel DC picked Willets that are now going for $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 a bottle, and we have cases of it at the store for like $60 wholesale.
Man,
do I now wish we held on to most of them? Absolutely, right?
Well, just call Mike Hines. I guess Mike's probably got it. He's probably got half of them on his shelves down there in Tennessee.
Mike definitely got a bunch as well, and that's another guy that's doing really, really well. I'm sure you guys. I don't know how much you guys are following. Like the stuff at Nashville Barrel Company is just absolutely blowing up. I mean, he's doing things the right way. He's transparent with people. And we were talking earlier about being genuine, right? That's Mike to a T. Mike is who he is, right? Like you can't help but like the guy when you meet him. You can't help but support the brand. I mean, they're just really check all the boxes for us. Yeah,
we had Mike on the show last year just before they started Nashville Barrel. He was obviously very excited about it. We were excited to get to taste some stuff with him. He sent us a lot of samples, which was really, really cool. I've not been down there because we're only 3 hours from Nashville. I've got family down there. I need to go visit them now that they opened their own shop up down there. It looks really cool, everything I've seen. But Mike's just a very genuine, like you said, genuine guy. Just a really cool guy. The first time I met him in person was at Wilderness Trail. He was here for the barbecue festival. and they were going in to do a barrel pick. And he was like, "Why don't you just come along with us?" And I'm like, "Seriously?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Yeah, all right." So I got to go in, and they actually had a barrel at Willet. At Wilderness Trail. They had a 15-year-old barrel of Willet that they were doing for the F Cancer.
Yeah.
And they tapped into that. So I got to taste some of the, actually at that point it was 16 years old because it was 15 that had been aged a year in their warehouse there. So I was like, this is like heaven, So I'm like, Mike Hines will always have a very high place on my list of people that I admire and really appreciate. So yeah,
super generous dude, very giving, does a lot for charity, as you mentioned.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And is kind of almost oversharing, right? Like he's almost like too giving. It's like we pull back, like, I don't need to be able to drink all these things when I come to your house. It's okay. Like you can jack and I'll be happy.
That's what I need to do. We need to go down there at some point because when we had him on the show, he was sitting there with his wall of Willet behind him.
Yeah.
Matt and I were both just like, what?
Well, I'll tell you, I was there as recently as just a few weeks ago. It's changed significantly. The Willets are still there, but it has certainly been overtaken by a wall of Nashville Barrel.
Barrel.
A lot of other things as well, but it's not just predominantly Willet anymore.
Well, that's cool. Well, let's talk a little bit more about this Dexter. Matt, what are you thinking, man, in terms of the palate and the finish on this one?
The palate is really thick. That was the first impression I got. It's really thick, really oily, almost feels like a syrup in the mouth. And it's just got this really, really thick, viscous, oily consistency. But right up front on the palate, I got a little bit of that butterscotch again and a little bit of grain. But then it lended to more of the high rye coming through. It's very minty. I picked up a lot of mint coming through with it, like toasted sugar. I think some of the influence from the maple and the cherry were coming through as well with the sweetness on it. It's got like a really mapley sweetness, really toasted sugar sweetness, nice oaky flavor too, and then a good peppery finish. It's good. It's not like super robust. It's also not flat though. I think it strikes a good balance.
Yeah, on the palate, Matt, you were talking about on the nose that you got a little bit of youthfulness to it. I kind of got that on the palate, maybe a little bit of that grain forward. Which, well, I should say when I taste that on a bourbon, it makes me think that it's young. So I was kind of picking that up, but I did get that maple syrupy kind of feeling almost. That flavor, that sweetness to it. But then it does lend to that. It was almost more of like a cinnamon spice to me than pepper. But it was fine. But the neck tag on it says it was a top 12 bourbon from Ultimate Spirits Challenge, a top 10 bourbon.
One of the top 12 bourbons in the world from 2020.
I'm not sure that I'm going to, it's good, but I'm not sure that I'm necessarily going to go there. Prav, what'd you think about it in terms of the taste? What'd you get on it, man?
So it's actually funny. What Matt said was the very first thing I thought of as well, that it was really viscous. Like I can even see legs on it in my glass right now. And they're kind of like almost stuck, if you would, to the glass, like which is generally very cool, right? It's oily, thick, really viscous, as Matt said. I do enjoy the spice on the finish. I'm not a huge fan of the mid palate on it. Like it's okay, but I do get a lot of, to me, it's the same thing as what you said and what I initially nosed. I get a lot of youth on it. Like, to me, I don't taste the complexity, unfortunately, that I like. At the same time, for what it is, I'm sure it's a great whiskey, and I'm sure with more age on it, it's only going to get better and better.
Yeah.
It sounds like they've got a cool thing going with the 3-wood, and hopefully, they give their barrels more time, if you would, as well, because I do think this has a lot of potential. Yeah,
I agree with that. I'm not saying it's a bad bourbon at all. It's a very good bourbon. Not a top 10 bourbon in my book, but still good. And I think, like you said, with some more time in the barrels, and I think it would mature and be better balanced, more well-rounded, I would think is a better way to say that. So, all right, guys, we're actually at the end of round 2 here. But so what are your final thoughts on this one, Matt? What do you think?
I thought it was good.
Okay.
I don't know, nothing to like really write write home about too much, but
Yeah.
I think I'll agree and kind of echo what we're all saying, that give it a couple of years and we might really be onto something. But
Yeah.
I'm certainly not disappointed.
Yeah. And Prav, you kind of feel the same way, obviously, there. So we got that. Yeah.
100%.
All right, guys. Well, let's take a quick break, get a couple of words from our sponsors here, and we'll be back with more with Prav Saraff, the Director of Operations from One West Dupont Circle Wines and Liquors in Washington, D.C., in just a minute.
Located just east of Lake Tahoe and the Sierra Nevada mountains, Frey Ranch Distillery was founded by fifth-generation Nevada farmers. Our grain-to-glass bourbon is made using a 4-grain mash bill, including a non-GMO corn, rye, wheat, and barley, all of which is 100% sustainably grown on the 1,500-acre Frey Ranch. And our commitment to excellence shows with a recent gold medal win at the 2020 Whiskeys of the World and USA Spirits competitions. Find out more at www.freyranch.com.
The Stave Restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise right here in the heart of bourbon country. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day that features an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, the Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring the local distilleries. Be sure to check them out online at thestavekentucky.com or at Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky.
All right, everybody, welcome back for the third and final segment round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me, as always, live in the Bourbon Life Studios is my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing out there, man?
Mark, I'm so glad to be back for the third round here. How about yourself?
I am too, man. We're having a good time tonight. I love it when we get to meet somebody new. Even though we've talked before, man, it's just fun to get to sit down and, even though we don't record video, but it's fun to be able to kind of talk face to face, even through a computer, man. It's just nice to be able to make that connection. So I'm having a really good time tonight doing that. So Matt, tell everybody who we have with us, if you would.
I would, and I will. He is the Director of Operations.
How much have you had to drink out there, Matt?
Maybe not
Turn
enough.
that fireplace off, man. You're a little
toasted. The Director of Operations at One West Dupont Circle Wine and Liquors in Washington, D.C., Prav Saraff. Prav, welcome back. How you been, man?
Living the dream, brother. Living the dream. Good whiskey, good company. What more could a guy ask for, right?
Yeah, man. Matt, I'm surprised you got his name right, man. You're supposed to come up with something like Prav Saraff or something. Come on, man.
What can I say? After the butchering I did on our last show, I'm trying to live by the straight and narrow for a bit.
Oh, man. All right, Matt. So you got this bottle out there with you, as a matter of fact, for this third round. So tell everybody, if you don't care, what we have poured up for this third and final round.
I would love to. We have poured up the Blue Run High Rye Bourbon. This is coming in at 111 proof. It is 4 years old and was distilled at Castle and Key by master distiller Jim Rutledge. And the mash bill on it says right on the bottle here, 65% corn, 30 rye, and 5 barley.
Yeah, and I think this is a bottle I picked up, last or 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I've seen some people criticizing this. It's a 4-year-old. The retail on this was kind of high. It's like $95, man. So it's a little pricey, but this was Jim's first. I think, Jim's kind of done some advising with Blue Run in the past, and they've released some like a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old and a couple other things that Jim's advised on. But I think this is one he's actually listed as the distiller, even though it was through Castle and Key. I think this is the first release that Jim is actually listed to be either the master distiller. I can't remember if that's the official title, but he's like the first one. This is the first one he's tied into. And of course, if you don't know Jim Rutledge, you need to do some research on Jim. But one of the bourbon greats, obviously. So So Matt, what do you pick up in terms of the nose on this Blue Run?
It's got kind of a smoky nose, like kind of a smoky, earthy nose. And then I'm picking up, it's kind of funny to say, but like cornstarch. Like I'm think of like what a marshmallow smells like, but not what it tastes like. how
Yeah,
marshmallows kind of have like that starchy,
on the outside.
sugary,
Yeah.
like on the outside. If you were to smell a marshmallow, not taste it, it kind of has like that inviting sort of smell to it.
Matt, that's
weird
to me. I think that's kind of like that Topps baseball gum or Topps baseball bubble gum.
Yeah, I think you're right. It could be something similar to that.
Starchy type of flavor, the sweetness from that. So yeah, a little different. But this is a high rye. What was it, Matt? 30%
30%. Yeah,
so not
like
as
a little
high
bit of graham cracker in there too. Like a little bit of baking spice, I think.
Yeah. Prav, what about you? What do you think in terms of the nose on this one? What do you think?
I actually think I enjoy the nose.
Yeah.
I think I get depth on it for sure. Like it's got a lot going on. I was not able to pinpoint,
that's fine.
2 notes at all by any means, but I think I enjoyed the nose. And again, I haven't gotten a chance to taste it yet because I want to wait till you guys taste it to do it together.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Yeah, we kind of got a strange way. It's like we talk about the nose, and then we jump into a conversation, and we come back and talk about the flavor. But yeah, the nose on it, even if we're a 4-year-old, I still I don't get a lot of youthfulness. Like talking about going back to talk about the Dexter, where that grain was kind of I don't really pick up that youthfulness on. Of course, it's still a bourbon. I was going to say it's a rye, but it's not. Usually when a younger rye is going to come across a lot better than a younger bourbon. So, but anyway, I really enjoy the nose. So let's jump back in though, Prav, and talk about the business. And, it was fun, talking about the fact that, I mean, you really have seen this boom in terms of the bourbon, and you're doing the Prav's picks. Can you talk about that just a little bit? I mean, how that started and where it is now and what you're doing with all that?
Yeah, I would love to. So we were talking very briefly earlier about how we've been doing bourbon barrel picks and barrel picks in general, Scotch, et cetera, for quite some time, right? And ever since like kind of online groups became a thing, if you would, where you could buy and sell and trade bottles, we had been doing that. And our barrel picks we've been very lucky and very blessed to have had like almost a following. And I hate saying that because it sounds so douchey. But we've been very like blessed to have had a following for quite a while, right? So we've never had a problem like selling our barrel picks. We've always had a lot of demand for them. So back in the day, we would list like a few on this particular online portal, and then a few we would list for sale on a different online portal, and then a few a different online portal, like 10 to 12 bottles here and there in 4, 5, 6 different places, just so people around the country that couldn't walk into the store could still have access to them and could try them.
Right.
DC is very cool and liberal about where all you can ship to, so it gave us access to be able to kind of grow our fan base. God, I hate that. A fan base, if you would, national.
Oh, but it's true. I mean, it's nothing to feel weird about. I mean, you've got people that love what you do, and I mean, they're fans of what you do, and there's nothing wrong with saying that people admire and respect and enjoy what you do, and they are fans of your work. So I don't see a problem. Thank
you. Thanks. I appreciate it. I mean, it's just, we've been very blessed with supporters for sure. Right.
Yeah.
So we did that so that we could kind of gain support and kind of notoriety, if you would, in different parts of the country. And it became, to me, a little bit overwhelming because it was a little bit difficult to keep track of, like, I sold 10 bottles here and 12 bottles, 10 bottles here and 8 bottles there. So one day I was thinking, why don't I centralize all of this? So we created this place called Prav's Picks. And the concept behind it was twofold. One, it was to bring people together into one place and kind of build a community where we could share our private barrel picks. And 2, we could raise money for charity.
Nice.
Charity is something that's always been very, very important to my family. We literally came from nothing, dude. When I tell you, like, we were poor when we first moved to this country and when we first struggled in our first, few years of living here. I mean, we were poor, like dirt poor, like no money for Christmas gifts. Like we would go to the dollar store and mom would be like, I've got 2 siblings. So she'd be like, between the 3 of you guys can get 4 to 5 things each at the dollar store for Christmas. And like, our wrapping paper was the dollar store sales paper because wrapping paper also costs money. And like when we would go into like buy these Christmas gifts for ourselves, it was like, you can buy these, but for the next, 2 weeks at the house, when we have dinner, we're going to have just rice and lentils, no vegetables, because I won't have money to pay for vegetables because we just bought Christmas gifts. So like, giving back is super important to us because we've seen it all here, right? So we want to always try to do what we can and do our part to help those that need a smile, those that need a little lift me up, those that could use a little hand, because we've been in those positions, right? So we want to make sure that we can do our part, and that's always been a huge thing for us. So when we started Prav's Picks, that was like the premise was like, not only will we be able to centralize all, the sharing of our barrel picks with the supporters around the country, but we'll also be able to focus our energy in doing things for charity and to give back to the community. So what we started to do is every barrel pick we got, we would set aside roughly 50 to 60%, sometimes a little more than that, of the barrel pick to be sold exclusively on Prav's Picks. Okay. And then the rest of it would be sold at the store or consumed by me, or used or used as gifts, etc. But the bottles that were sold online, we found out that we had this crazy following. Like, we would list things and they would sell out, Mark. I'm not kidding you. In like 20 seconds, in like 40 seconds, right? Like, wow. It was like mind-blowing stuff. Like, we would sell 120 bottles of a barrel pick in less than a minute. And that became the norm, not the exception. To the point where, like, wow, if something would last like 2 to 3 minutes, people would be like, oh man, this thing was so slow. Like, no, you can't drink this one. So what we started to do was take some of that momentum and created this community that's really, really cool. The people on Prav's Picks, and we've got about 2,000 members, I think right now. I can look exactly if we need to, but I've got about 2,000 or so members right now. And it genuinely feels like a true online community. There's no drama. There's no BS. Everybody helps each other. Everybody supports each other. Somebody could come on and be like, hey man, how do I do this, that, or the other? Or I'm looking for this. And like 10 people rush to go help them. And it's like really, nice, really cool to see. And then we started, like, my wife and I were talking one day. I was like, what should we make our goal to, like, raise funds for charity using our barrel picks as the backbone, if you would, to do so for the first year, right? So we decided on, let's go for $10,000. I think was the number, and I could be wrong because my memory sucks with numbers, unfortunately, sometimes. But let's assume it was 10,000, right? We exceeded that the first year. So then the second year, we was like, okay, why don't we go for like, 20,000 or whatever? We exceeded that. So like to this year, I think we're going to raise $55,000 for charity.
Wow, man.
Like different various things. And that's this year alone on the page, just using like, our barrel picks and the platform and the supporters that we have. So like how we do that is like we do a few different things. One of the things that we came up with about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, is something that I call a charity randomizer. So whenever we put out a barrel pick that's really sought after, and let's say I'm going to put up 100 of them, right? And I know that there's going to be 300 to 400 people that are going to all want a bottle each. Obviously, right. I don't have 300 to 400 bottles of it to give out. I wish I did, but we don't. So we thought a fair way to do it would be to randomize which 100 get it instead of just like the first few to click or whatever, right? So we started to do what we call a charity randomizer. We would pick a charity that was important to us, or we would let sometimes members dictate what charity is important to them. And everybody would buy, again, air quotes, a raffle ticket to get into this randomizer by donating to charity. So you donate to charity, you post a screenshot of that donation thread, and that's essentially your raffle ticket. And then we would pick 100 tickets or whatever it is, right? And then those 100 people would be the ones that would be selected to be able to purchase the bottle. The very first bottle that we did this with was a Weller 107 a non-chill filtered bottle that we did, one that we stickered and waxed and called the Weller Wonka. We sold 160 bottles of that in 48 seconds. And that actually, let me go backwards. I'm so sorry. I'm mixing up my things there. We did sell 160 bottles in 48 seconds of it, but that wasn't a charity randomizer. That was back when we did what we called bin with donation. For those that may not know, bin is the acronym for Buy It Now, but it was bin with donation, which meant you had to pay for the bottle, but you also had to put in a minimum donation of $10 towards charity to be able to buy the bottle as well. And we raised a little over $2,000 when we did that. Then we started to do the randomizers because it was like, this thing was really cool, but we realized we could have raised way more money than the 160 times 10 or whatever it was, right? And at the same time been fair to everybody else. It's not just the fastest internet that wins. It's not just being able to be logged on at 5 p.m. or whatever
right.
that wins, right? Just to make it fair. So now when we do a charity randomizer, on average, they raise between $2,500 to $5,000 or so per barrel pick. The most recent one that we did, I think, was an Eagle Rare one that raised a little over $3,700. I mean, it's a ton of fun, dude, to be very honest with you. To be able to do something that's so important to myself and my family, and to be able to use our barrel picks, if you would, to support that, it's genuinely a dream come true, man. I mean, it's like, you mix two of your passions and your hobbies, if you're two things that you are so passionate about and you care so much about, and you get to blend them together, like, you can't ask for anything more as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I mean, that's a great story. And, I love your family story. Everything you shared with us. I mean, it's amazing that your dad came here with nothing and you guys had nothing when you got here. And now you've built this great, just great community, great business, a great model, took some risk, obviously, to make it happen. And that's just really cool. So let's talk about this, what you do and how you do it. Because I think some of our listeners would love to know some things. You talked about some of the bottles earlier, what they're price-wise, what they sell for now. So can you say what the highest priced bottle is that you've ever tracked down for somebody?
Yeah, it would be 595,000 to be exact. A bottle of Japanese whiskey called Yamazaki 55-year-old.
Holy crap, man.
And I will say, by the way, that is actually a bargain. You go online and go to Wine Searcher or whatever, our list price of it at $595,000 is actually the cheapest of any retailer anywhere in the world. That bottle has a list price of up to $1.1 million, if I remember correctly, and has gone in several auctions at like north of $700,000. So like the guy that the guy that bought the bottle from us at $595 was like, dude, this is a bargain. I was like, I know, I'm looking you up.
And you gave him a free bottle of the $600 Macallan 38.
Absolutely. But the way we do business is now completely changed, because now we realize that having access to these bottles, that's the bait. It's no longer giving away stuff. It's no longer like, hey, sir, please buy this from me. It's almost become like hey, I'm going to let you buy this from me. I'm going to put you up by letting you make this sale.
Yeah.
So it's like when that switched, it was like, that was the game changer to realize like having access to these, becoming essentially a concierge, if you would, to the who's who. That was the game changer. That was what like really flipped it on its head for us.
So, Prav, I'm just curious, and not to give away trade secrets or business secrets or whatnot, but I mean, it's obviously taking you time. I mean, you have to have a huge connection network. You have to have a lot of relationships, I'm assuming, to be able to track. I mean, it's not that somebody can say, "Hey, I'm going to be able to track down a $595,000 bottle of whiskey." No big deal. I'll do that for you. It's not a problem. So, I mean, you've had to have taken a lot of time and built a lot of great relationships to be in the position to do that.
Yeah, Mark, no doubt. I mean, I tell people all the time, we're very, very blessed because we've come across some really, really cool people and have some of the best relationships in the industry and in the business and in life in general. And that's on the buying side and on the selling side. Because to your point, like maybe we could have 10 buyers lined up for this bottle, but if we can't produce the bottles, then it does no good. That's no good. And vice versa. We could have 10 bottles lined up, but if we have nobody to buy them from us, then it does us no good, right? So we've got to kind of work both sides of the relationships and both sides of the connections. And luckily, we've been able to do that. It obviously is something that is not very easy, as you said. It's obviously something that's very time consuming. It's something that I'm very passionate about, is building relationships. I always tell people all the time, we're not a retailer. We're in the concierge business. We're not a liquor store. We're a concierge service. We just happen to sell booze. Right? We happen to sell booze, but I truly think of myself as a concierge, as like a white glove concierge service. And that's not to say that, like, you could come into my store to buy a bottle of Tito's and I would treat you the same way as I would, this guy that wants to buy a $595,000 bottle, because like I was telling you, like, we built our entire business model on two things: customer service and selection. And that's it. And that's literally it. Right. So customer service can't be selective.
Right. No, that's great, man. I love to hear that. That's really awesome. So what's the highest priced bourbon that you've tracked down for somebody?
At the time when I did it, it would have been the Very Old Fitz Blackhawk bottle, if you're familiar with that. So it's the barrel.
Not familiar with that one.
It's the barrel proof Very Old Fitz that was done for the Chicago Blackhawks owners.
Okay.
Single barrel proof. At that time, I would say it was probably like a $60,000 bottle. Now it's probably like 150 or so. I would have to take a guess if I was.
Oh man.
Yeah, that was a fun one. And that was actually a really cool one also because I almost stumbled into it. I was talking to the guy that ended up selling it to me about buying a bunch of Michters and a bunch of Van Winkles from him. And then, as I always do whenever I'm buying something, I say, what else do you have?
What does he have? Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. What else can I spend? Like, I'm already spending money with you. You're already either coming here or I'm coming there. We're already transacting. Why not make it better for you? Right? And
right.
Like one of my cheesy lines is always like, let me help you buy a purse for your wife.
You're like Jerry Maguire. It's like, help me to help you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like I always tell people, like, let me buy your wife a purse. Like, what else can you sell me? And then he was like, oh man, dude, I've got this bottle. I was like, yeah, perfect.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's got a signed copy of the Declaration of Independence on the back of the label.
Exactly.
Okay. Oh man, that's incredible. I mean, it's just crazy, but that's great. And you can, you're set up to where you can buy bottles, but then you can turn around and resell those. So there's no issue. Because I know some people are like, how in the world is he able to do that?
Yeah, so it's something really cool, right? DC is awesome place for us to do what we do because of the laws and the way they're set up here.
Right.
We can legally buy from essentially any secondary source. The law essentially restricts us to not be able to buy something that is available at a distributor in DC in the quantity that we desire, in the time period that we desire it.
Gotcha.
So if that doesn't exist, if the distributor doesn't have it in the quantity you want, in the time period that you want it, then you are allowed to source it from outside. You just have to pay these taxes and fill out a little, importation tax permit, et cetera. Just do some paperwork, and then it's legal and you can resell it. What that's done is give us the ability to be able to buy these types of bottles and resell them, and to be able to keep our Black Book clients happy, and to be able to say, you know what, whatever you need, we'll go find it, because we know we can find it and then turn around and really resell it to you. A lot of times there's like a little bit of kickback, if you would, from some people that aren't in the know of the way our business operates, to be like, oh, dude, but your prices are above secondary. And it's generally because, like, yeah, dude, because we bought them on secondary.
Right.
Business of losing money. So we paid secondary for these bottles. So obviously the price is going to be higher than secondary.
Right.
Right. But like at the same time, where else in the city and maybe in the country can you walk in and be like, I need 24 bottles of Pappy 23 tomorrow morning at 10:30 a.m. And the guy's going to go, yeah, no problem. You want me to deliver to your house or your office, or you want to come pick them at the store? Like, where else can you do that? Like, I know in our store you can, but I can't think of somewhere else where you could do that.
No, not at all. And I love when I get on your Instagram and I see a post of bottles and I'm like, holy crap, seriously? And you're like, wait till next week.
And that's actually really bad, Mark, because I don't even post like 95% of the stuff, right? Like, I just either get caught up and don't take pictures or something. And I'm like, oh crap, we already packed that up for shipping. I'm not going to unpack it just to take a picture. Or this is really cool, but I don't think this guy wants me to post a picture of his purchase. So like, let's not do it. So like, we don't even post like 95% of the stuff that we do. That's really cool. I'll tell you a fun story, because you were asking about like, some of the kind of like fun bottles and like fun, like you're talking in one of the breaks of like, kind of fun and like really cool events or whatever, right? So we did an event for a client of mine that lives in LA back when George W. Bush was in office. There was a fundraiser in Napa Valley for $40,000 a plate as a fundraiser for his presidential campaign. And my client flew me out for the weekend to do a Scotch tasting during this fundraiser, or one of the events during the fundraiser. I was going to do a Scotch tasting, and then I was going to get to potentially attend some of the events and stuff. The night of that Scotch tasting, we did the house whiskey was Macallan 30. So like if you went to the bar and ordered like a whiskey ginger, you got a Mac 30 with ginger. It's like
What?
It's like the definition of opulence was that night, dude. It was like so easy, right? So like people would come up to the table where I had my table set up to be like, hey, yeah, dude, man, what's going on? I would love to try some whiskey. And I was like, okay, cool. Can I tell you a little bit out there? And like, no, just pour me whatever. And they're getting like Macallan 40-year-old poured for them. And like, I have no clue what they're drinking.
No idea.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's like half full glasses of whiskey, like all over the place. And then there were some guys that were like really into it and like kind of nerdy, like I am about it, right? And they're like, oh, this is amazing. Tell me everything. And then they'd like leave their girlfriend to the side. So they like hang out with me and like, just chat with me for the whole night and stuff. That was like really, really neat. That was an amazing experience, man. That weekend, we opened with my client, a Macallan Lalique 50-year-old, 55-year-old, 57-year-old, and a 60-year-old, just on a whim. So during the weekend, after one of the events, a few of the guys went back to his house just to kind of hang out. And he's like, Prav, why don't you come by and show, like hang out for a little bit? I know you made the trip for me and I really appreciate it and everything. So I was like, yeah, awesome. And then we're sitting there talking about scotch randomly. And he goes, hey, did you ever end up shipping that order? I was like, yeah, it arrived here like 2 weeks ago or whatever. And he's like, oh, do you know where it is? I was like, no, I believe, your housekeeper put it in the cellar, but I'm not 100% sure because that's what she usually does. And he goes, can you go down to the cellar and grab the bottles if they're there? I was like, yeah, of course. I go downstairs, they're there, bring them back up. Right? He's like, let's try them. I was like, which one? He goes, no, all of them. Let's try them. We opened 1, 2, 3, and 4. Like,
man,
at this time, those bottles are probably conservatively between like $40,000 to $65,000 each. Now they're all like well into the six figures by this time.
Yeah.
Wow.
But we just casually opened, I don't know, a little north of $200,000 worth of whiskey in like a matter of 10 minutes and went through and like 6 guys just, drink up, guys.
Drink up. Yeah. So your clientele, obviously it's across the United States, but is the larger part there in DC or is it just scattered throughout the States?
Actually, very few of my really, really, really high-end clients are actually in DC proper.
Okay.
Most of our really high-end clients are either in different parts of the country or even in different parts of the world.
Okay.
That Yamazaki bottle we were talking about, the gentleman flew in from Asia to buy the bottle. Right. It's like, there's people everywhere. I think you asked me earlier, and I don't remember if it was during the break or during the show, what's one of the like most fun stories of any bottle that I had ever had to acquire. Right.
Oh yeah.
So there was a bottle of Macallan that was available at the Dubai, UAE, Dubai duty-free airport. And a client of mine, the same guy actually in LA, really wanted this bottle. I searched and searched and searched, finally found out that it's available at this airport. I was like, no big deal. I happened to be going to India like 3 weeks later anyways. So I was like, I'll just change my flight. And instead of going in through London, I'll just go in through Dubai and then I can bring the bottle back on the way back.
Yeah.
So on the way back from India, I picked up this bottle at the airport and this thing came in a box and I'm not a big guy by any means, right? I'm only 5'4.5", but this thing box was like 2/3 my height, 2 feet wide, and it's only got one bottle inside. Right? So I buy the bottle obviously because my client wanted it, and then I'm like, how the hell am I going to get this on the plane? I was like, but it's not my problem, right? It's the airline's problem. That's what I was thinking. I was like, I bought something at your airport. I should be able to take it on the flight.
Right.
Right. Like, how you get it to me is not my problem. So I go to the check-in counter and they're like, what the hell is this? Like, this is an entire other human. Right? They're like, what do you expect us to do with this? I was like, I don't know. I was like, I bought it. I was like, you tell me what to do with it. And they're like, well, we can check it in as luggage. I was like, absolutely not.
No. Yeah.
Receipt on this thing. It's a $60,000 bottle. You are absolutely not going to check it in as luggage. And God forbid something happens to it, which I know it will. You're going to hand me a check for $600 and say, here's your $600
right.
ticket.
Right.
So we discussed for quite some time. The solution we finally came up with is inside the box was another box. Inside that box was another box. Inside that box was the bottle. So like the actual bottle that had the box, the most valuable part of it was not that big. Like, think about like a 6-pack of whiskey, right? Like it was about that size.
Right.
I was like, I'll just take this on the plane with me. Right. And then you can check in everything else. Right. So that's what they finally did. I get to my seat and there's a guy sitting next to me and he goes, dude, I got to ask you what that thing costs, if you don't mind, man. Because he's like, because I saw the scuttle at the check-in and everything. He's like, and I know it's obviously very important and I know it's expensive. That's why you wouldn't check it in. And he's like, if you don't mind, man, I got to ask you. I was like, no, I don't mind, but I'm going to tell you once we land, not right now. So that I'm.
Yeah, because he roofied you and you woke up in the morning and he didn't order anything in the bottle.
I'll tell you once we land, right? And he's like, and then we started chatting. And it's actually somebody I still talk to on and off today.
Very cool.
Anyway, so I told him, I was like, when we land, I was like, it's $60,000. He goes, what the F? He's like, why is somebody that can buy a $60,000 bottle sitting in coach? I was like, it's because I'm sitting in coach that I can afford to buy the $60,000.
Yeah.
I was like, if I was sitting in first class, I wouldn't have the money to buy this.
No doubt, man. No, that's crazy though. But that's awesome, man. I enjoy that. That's a great story, Prav. Yeah, definitely. Thanks. So guys, let's talk real quick about the whiskey again, the Blue Run. Matt, what about the palate and finish on this one for you?
Spicy. That was kind of my first impression. It's got nice spice right on the front of the palate. Peppercorn, the baking spice comes through. And it's a little bit minty. I'm picking up some mint, some herbs on it as well. And a nice heat on the finish. I think it drinks really well.
Yeah, for 4 years old. I'm really, really surprised how well this one drinks. Like I said, it was $95, almost $100. So man, it's just hard to, say, yeah, I'm going to spend $100 on a 4-year-old bottle of bourbon. But man, that bottle, if you've not seen it, it's gorgeous. Hold that bottle up.
Those butterflies don't come cheap, Mark.
No, man. It's like, and that one's got like the iridescent butterfly, doesn't it, Matt?
Yeah, it does.
Isn't that that's like the same tattoo that you have on your lower back, right, Mark?
It might as well be a bullseye, Matt. You know what I'm saying? Oh yeah. So, but yeah, Prav, what do you think about it in terms of the palate?
100%. I think it's complex. I think it's spicy. I think it's got a lot going on. I really enjoyed it, and I hate to say it because I know we just said this with the last one as well, but man, I'm excited to see what this does with some age. Like 7, 8 years old, I feel like this thing is going to be singing.
Yeah, I agree, man. And I'm happy to see that Jim's working with them in doing that. So I was happy to get this bottle. So yeah, $100. And I think that's what really convinced me was the fact that this was the first one where Jim's listed as really either master distiller or whatever capacity. But I was like, yeah, I'm going to pick that one up. So not disappointed at all. The flavor's great. The pricing's not the greatest, but hey, it is what it is. So Prav, let me ask you this. 21-year-old Prav, did you ever imagine that down the road that this is where you would be and this is what what you started doing with your dad to help out on the weekends and in the summers, that it would grow into this?
Man, I'd be lying to you if I said I did, right? I think we've said time and time again tonight that we're very blessed. We've been very blessed with the relationships and the supporters and everything that we've come to. I never envisioned genuinely, I didn't envision living the life we're living now, having experienced some of the things that we've experienced now. Like, I mean, we've got stories for days, right?
Yeah.
And the people that we've come across and the things that we've been able to do, it's just been like so mind blowing. And I'll tell you a really funny, real quick story. The other day I came up to my pops at the end of the night. Like we had just closed out our month and had our greatest month that we've ever had. And I went up to him and we were discussing numbers, and I just looked at him and I said, man, you remember when we first bought our first store? I was like, what we sold in an entire year for the first year, I said, we eclipsed that in like 2 to 3 weeks this month. Like, did you ever imagine that? I asked him exactly what you just asked me, right? I was like, did you ever imagine that? And my dad's like, sits back, like cool as a cucumber, right? Like I'm all excited. I'm like on this adrenaline high, right? And he just sits back and he goes, yeah. And I was like, whoa. Like, yeah. And he just casually goes, I had you.
Oh man.
Whoa, right? Like it was like a cool, like amazing. Because my pops is never the type to be like to verbally tell you he's proud of you, right? Like it's like, like he shows you and stuff, but he'll always keep pushing and motivating and being like, right. We can do more, we can do better. And he just, when he said that, when I finished, I went running to my room to my wife. I was like, baby, I think Dad just said he's proud of me.
That's cool. That was going to be one of my questions, man. What's your pops think? Is he proud of you? So obviously you answered that question, man.
Yeah,
so
dude, he loves it. He loves everything that, we've done. And he's just so deserving of every success that he could possibly come his way. And, I think we are just starting to like get to the point where he can just finally like be like, yeah, like I did this and I did I feel that way. And I, like I said, he deserves anything and everything every success in the world just because what he did and the sacrifices that he made and how selfless he was to get us to where we are.
Yeah, very true, man. That's very cool. I love the story, Prav. And we could sit here all night. And I think we're going to have to definitely do a round 2 at some point. You come down to Kentucky or
hell yeah, I'd love that.
Whatever. Yeah, man, we'll sit around in person and drink some more.
I would love that also, man. Shit, you had me to drink some more.
There you go. So real quick before we close it out, man, what does the future look like for Prav and also for one? I'm not even gonna go through the whole name. For the store.
For the store. So for me, one of the biggest things that we're working on now and that I'm going to focus a lot on in 2022 is we've got our own label that we started and launched called Dream Spirits, because it was always my dad's dream. So we've got an inventory, a decent number of barrels, and we've got some bourbon barrels, we've got some rye barrels, we've got some light whiskey, we've got an age range of 4 to 19 years, I think, in stock. So we're going to do a bunch of different single barrel bottlings. We're going to do some small batch stuff. Just finished creating or finalizing our gin recipe. So we have a gin coming soon. I'm in the process of finalizing our vodka recipe. The gin recipe legitimately took me 6 months, man, because I'm such a perfectionist and because it's got my name on it, my family's name on it. It's got our story. It's everything my pops has built, if you would. It's like his legacy that he wants to leave. So we're like really making sure that we do things the right way.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a big focus of mine in 2022 is to build the Dream Spirits brand and to kind of get it in the right hands and do things the right way. We're really going to slow play it. We're not all about deep hardcore market penetration.
Right.
So we're blessed where we can kind of, in this sense, almost own all 3 tiers of distribution or making or whatever. Hey, we're the bottle, we're the wholesalers in a way, we're the retailers. So we can really give people a very fair product at a very fair price. We did a soft launch, if you would, of 4 single barrels in October, I think it was, 2 bourbons and 2 ryes. The ryes were both 5-year MGP rye. The bourbons were both 7-year Barton bourbons. And we sold out of our 4 barrels in 8 minutes online, which was like really cool. So that was something that really made Dad happy, just to see that, there is the following, and, my son isn't lying about all these internet friends and supporters and stuff like that. So that's definitely our next biggest step. And then aside from that, we've got a couple other fun side projects that we're working on that I'll definitely share with you.
On the next episode, right?
Yeah, on the next episode. Exactly.
When
the time is more appropriate for it, because I feel like the conversation would go on forever if we discussed those as well.
No, that sounds great. So where can people find you guys, information about you and what you do?
So anywhere really, social media is great. Instagram is probably where I would say we post more than anything else. And on Instagram, it would be at West Dupont Wines. And that's West Dupont Wines is plural. And I'll apologize right now if you send me a message and it takes forever to get back to you, as Mark is proof of the fact that I am terrible sometimes at getting back to people, not because I don't care or I don't want to respond. It's just because it gets to be very overwhelming.
Sure. Yeah.
On a given day, my Facebook Messenger receives probably conservatively 600 or so PMs on a given day. And then, probably 30 or 40 or so on Instagram. And then, add the texts and the phone calls and the emails. So it snowballs real quickly as of 10:15 a.m. And I'm constantly trying to play catch up.
Man, I can't imagine that. But hey, I'm just happy that we can replace John and Zeke, going back to that. That's the biggest thing that I'm taking away from this whole podcast right now.
I love it. I will tell you though, Mark, careful what you ask for. I tell John all the time, he's my big cuddly teddy bear, man.
That's what John and I joke about, because we're about the same size, man. Yeah. He's actually a little bit taller than me. So, but yeah, we joke about that. They're like, when we're down at Grains and Grits, it's like 2 big teddy bears running around.
Yeah, 100%. And that's not just John's physical makeup. I feel like it's
him personally,
and that's who he is. He's just like a teddy bear. Every time you see him, you just want to hug him.
Give him a big hug. Yeah, I agree, man. I definitely agree with that. He's a great guy, man. So before we wrap it up, though, Prav, anything you want to add before we close it out?
No, man. Thank you guys so much for having me. Seriously, it's so cool for me to be able to meet new friends and to be able to chat like we've known each other forever. And it's really important to me to kind of tell people a little bit about our story, about my pops, and about like, you know, what we're building, and that we're not just, and I say this, and you may have seen it in our Instagram post, we're not an average liquor store. It's not what we do. It's not what we are. Do we sell Tito's and Bullet and Smirnoff and all of these things, Miller Lite? Yes, we do, because they're essentially a part of the business as well, but that's not who we are.
Right.
You know, take time out to get to know us. Take time out to build a relationship with us. Say hi if you're in the store, if you're in the area. Reach out if there's some obscure bottle you're looking for. You want to send a gift to somebody, reach out. I mean, literally anything and everything. With like our clients, I tell them all the time, man, like my phone is on 21 hours a day. I need about 3 hours a day to recharge my batteries. But aside from that, I'm like almost always available. Like I tell people all the time, like if you're at dinner and like you can't decide between two wines, and if you're a client of mine, text me and be like, hey, dude, what should I get? Or like, you know, you want to like whatever the question may be. Oh shit, Prav, I forgot it's my secretary's birthday. Can you have something there tomorrow for her? And, you know, we'll make it happen, like regardless of what you need, man.
That's awesome. That's great. That definitely great. And I love your story, Prav, and appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk with us.
I really am thankful. You guys are awesome. And I mean, I can't wait. I genuinely can't wait to be on again. So you tell me when we can do this again.
Yeah,
and we'll
man.
continue. Like, I feel like we could shoot the shit for hours, dude.
I think we could. I think we could too. Matt, before we wrap it up, man, anything you want to add?
Hey, Prav. Thanks, man. We really appreciate it. I know our listeners really do. I had a great time this evening. And if I could just give a little bit of a takeaway on everything, I wrote down 3 words throughout this evening that I really took away from this conversation with you. And they would be passion, enthusiasm, and humility. And I think those really stand out from what you've given us and given all of our listeners, and your business model and what you do and just who you are. And so I'm really appreciative of that. It's been a really great time to chat with you and to share a little bit of the spirits that we all really enjoy, but more just to learn more about you and to get to know you better. So thank you, man.
Man, what a mind-blowing compliment, dude. Thank you. That means so much. I genuinely have goosebumps on my hairy ass arms right now. Like, I mean, that was amazing, dude. Thank you so much. It means a lot to me.
Yeah, and I can't close it out any better than that. Matt is the master of the words, man. So he's an expert at that.
And
but
so you don't keep him around just for his good looks, huh?
No, it's not his good looks. And you know, I told him he looks like Rob Lowe from back in the days, man. But he doesn't agree with me. But
no,
yeah, he doesn't see it. But I've always thought that, man. But anyway, I digress on that one. But Prav, we appreciate it, man. We've had a great time tonight, and you know, we will definitely do this again. It'll be a lot of fun. This has been a lot of fun, and I know we can do it again and have a great time again. So,
100%.
Thanks for everything. And we want to thank all of our sponsors again. And we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Bespoken Spirits. We appreciate all of our sponsors. We appreciate all of our listeners, all of our Instagram followers, everybody on Facebook. If you have a question, man, please feel free to reach out to us at thebourbonlife@gmail.com, or you can our messenger is not nearly as clogged up as Prav's, so I usually try to respond to people. So feel free to reach out there as well. If you have questions, you know, you can always follow us and, you know, just comment or whatever you want to do. But we love to hear from you guys and hear suggestions and things about the show. So thank you guys for all that you do. Prav, again, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. It was a great time. And with that said, I'm going to wrap it up, send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full, and may you keep on living the bourbon life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the bourbon life.
Whether it's rye, sour mash Tennessee whiskey, or bourbon, Davidson Reserve has something delicious to offer any whiskey lover's palate. Pick up a bottle of one of our award-winning Davidson Reserve whiskeys from your local retailer today. Visit www.davidsonreserve.com for more information. And cheers to drinking local.